Hi, my name is Sadie Stevens, and I am discussing a huge theme that is prevalent in a lot of children's literature: freedom. It's what we all grew up listening to. And I want to ask everyone, have you ever felt like your freedom got taken away by any means? Did you ever strive for something that was vitally important to you? I want to discuss an important topic with you all that many of us have seen throughout our whole childhood. I think in everyone's life we deal with having our freedom taken away at some point. In that, I think it's important to fight to find your own freedom if it's been taken away from you. Children's books showcase the good, the bad, and the ugly. They are all stories of what we went through, the perseverance, courage, and bravery of what the reality was for each of these people. I think it's important to depict the true reality of what fighting for your freedom is like. It's not pretty and it can get very rough, but it's such an important thing to fight and define your freedom. Sometimes you find your freedom among others, being honest about who you are, or just fighting for what you want. Fighting to find your freedom is a must in everyone's lives. These children's books showcase it perfectly that I will be discussing. I've had to fight for freedom personally in my own life. I never understood how important it is to know your freedom and to fight for it amongst yourselves and others. One example I have of this was when I walked for freedom with A21 in Toronto, which is an organization that raises relief for people who have been enslaved and traded into human trafficking. I met a few of the people that had been enslaved at one point in their life. We listened to their stories and found out what this issue is so much worse than we ever really realized. There are many people that are being trafficked and enslaved today more than any other time in the world. I wanted others to understand the importance of standing up and fighting for your freedom or someone else's freedom. It needs to be taught at a young age, and that's when I realized that it is taught in so many children's books. So many books portray the same element. The main theme in all these stories is the true reality behind finding your freedom through children's literature. These children's books I picked all portray the true and the harsh reality of what it is like to not be accepted by others, but moving against the grain and fighting for your own freedom anyway. These books portray a reality of different viewpoints of how people haven't been accepted but need to find their voice being more of themselves or just fighting for what they believe in. This is such an important topic to know. I think the main driving force in life is fighting and having your freedom. Children's literature teaches us at such a young age that it's important matters throughout history where people had to fight for their own freedom. It's simple and to the point, and with the important matter it is portraying. In most children's books I read about usually someone fighting for themselves and what they believe in. A Sweet Smell of Roses by Angela Johnson. It's a book about a sweet smell in the air as two young girls sneak out of their house, down the street and across town to where men and women were gathered, ready to march for freedom and justice. Inspired by the countless young people who took a stand against the forces of injustice during the Civil War era. It shows the impact of getting with others to take a stand to take back your own freedom. There is power in numbers, and it can really help achieve what you really need. It gives you more of a push to have like-minded people around helping to stand up for the same thing as you want. And like I mentioned before, I walked for the entire downtown Toronto for an A21 walk for justice and for freedom about 2 years ago, and it was such an eye-opening experience, and it was a very shaping moment for me. We all walked in silence in a straight line with a cloth wrapped around our mouth. We all got a lot of attention as we walked for about 5 hours throughout the entirety of the downtown. We listened to people who were trafficked and sold overseas, and it made me realize how important it is to stand together and to help reshape important issues that are kind of pushed down by society. In Frederick's Journey, it tells the inspirational true story of a slave boy who ultimately achieves freedom and spreads his abolitionist beliefs to promote change. This was a children's book that I actually read when I was in school in the 2nd grade. There is a time difference with this book that goes in reverse and tells the exact story of what Frederick went through from future to past, and from his time of the change he made come back about. To his young adult life, to being a teenager and then a child and then to a baby, as well as what his mother went through after having him days later. The timeline draws the reader in more on how his life seemed to be more of a harsh struggle as you kept reading. This man changed the world with how he strove to fight for himself and to find freedom for all others who were enslaved like he was. He fought for African Americans to abolish slavery, for his perseverance. It changed the whole world even as we know it today because of that true reality of him fighting for his freedom to get out as a slave. The last book that I will be mentioning is called Drowned City, Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans by Don Brown. Another important element for fighting for your freedom is just surviving. I think sometimes we can be put in a situation to fight for you to keep going, to have your own freedom still. And a perfect example of this is Drowned City, Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans. This book is about Hurricane Katrina and the reality of what happened during those weeks of destruction. The people that were left behind had to fight to survive to get out. The book uses the technique of focusing on the experiences of individuals that can be extrapolated to encompass what happened to millions of people. Seeing a family desperately making its way to the roof from an already dangerous flooded attic is effective in conveying just how makeshift survival strategies became for those trapped in the city. Watching a small group of police officers make the decision to stay on the job and to do their duty highlights the dereliction of other officers who instead go looting. Understanding that the small organizations who chose to conduct relief efforts were very effective in helping those whom they had to reach underscores the dramatic failure of the federal government to even intervene. And this was all a true story that happened to the people that were left in Louisiana years ago. The story depicted the truth behind what actually happened behind the scenes of after Hurricane Katrina and the destruction that it came about with other people. And these are all children's books that all portray how we can all fight for freedom and how sometimes we are forced to fight for our own freedom. The reality of fighting for your freedom is crucial and comes in everyone's life eventually, I think. Either it's for your physical freedom, emotional freedom, or mental freedom. It's often said that ultimate freedom means independence, success, privilege, and the ability to do anything that one's heart desires. While so many of us are no longer chained today when it comes to ultimate freedom, many of us still remain caged somehow. We have all been created equally, yet our rights, opportunities, and justices remain unequal. For some people, freedom equates being able to attain a great education, a high-paying job, or owning a home, car, or an array of other things. Freedom is about being brave enough to go against another force and fight for what you think is ultimately the most important.